Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a wrap up for the ACMC Readathon that I hosted, and that stands for Animal Companion and Mythological Creatures. In honor of it being the wrap up for that, I am wearing my adorable librarian bookworm dragon sweatshirt. I'm going to talk about the books that I read for the readathon, the two that I didn't get around to, I still plan on reading them, the winners of the magic bingo cards, and then also any suggestions that you have given me that I'm going to try to implement for next year or any future readathons that I do. The books that I completed for the readathon are all of these lovely books. I ended up enjoying quite a few of them. One of them is an all-time new favorite. One of them I enjoyed greatly and I can't wait for its sequel. Another one I immediately ordered sequels to. Just to give you a heads up, the two that I did not read yet would be The Cardinal's Blades and Royal Assassin, which I know I'm constantly putting that one on TBRs and not getting around to. I'm still planning on reading it, but as of right now, I haven't. These books, I'm going to start with Age of Assassins by R.J. Barker. I had various different prompts for the readathon, and obviously Animal Companion Mythological Creature was at the core, but also there were other elements that I wanted to try and make sure made the readathon as diverse as possible, and one of them was some kind of physical disability in some way. And this one, our main character has a club foot and it does impact him, and he does face some negativity from others because of it, but it doesn't keep him from being himself and doing his thing. He is an assassin's apprentice, and I feel like at surface level this book sounds literally like Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, but it is very different. The main characters are totally separate, so if you're hearing this and you're thinking, that sounds exactly the same, I know it does, but it's not, I promise. In this story, we follow Gurton, which is not my favorite name, but I have to say, every time that I think about fantasy characters with names that people don't love, I think about Alan from Library of Alexandria, because he's really picky about fantasy names. So Alan, I'm curious, if you get around to watching this, what do you think of the name Gurton? Anyway, so this story follows Gurton, who is an assassin's apprentice, and they end up imprisoned at the beginning of the story and forced to become assassins of assassins. So they're sitting around in this castle, they're noticing all of these different political things going on, and they're trying to figure out who is trying to assassinate the heir to the throne, and they kind of get caught up in all of these different maneuverings, and I quite liked it. It was from Gurton's point of view, and I love the relationship between Gurton and his master, who is a woman. I thought the dynamic between them was fantastic. There was a sense of a little bit mother and son kind of a feeling, which I really liked, and I liked that this was definitely it has that classic medieval fantasy setting, but done in a way that, as I thought, refreshing. It was not overly sexist, which was nice. I mean, definitely there are things that are more difficult for some people over others, but it wasn't ever like, see, look at all these women being sexually assaulted all the time. I am considering doing an entire dedicated review to this book because I don't really see too many people discussing it, and I think a lot of people would really like it. It is great if you like just that classic fantasy feel, and our main character is very young, but I don't find him super obnoxious. He's roughly 16 years old, and I thought he was likable while also being a character who could grow as the story continued on. Next up, we have All the Tides of Fate, which is the sequel to All the Stars and Teeth. This is a YA fantasy story that has a sea island setting, and we follow our main character who they are the person who's supposed to take over the throne. This particular family are the ones that rule over these various different islands. There are different powers that individuals can have. I thought the magic was really interesting. I thought that the setting was very vibrant and vivid. I really liked the way the author did the setting, and I feel like we always got enough of like the different cultures within the different islands that it felt well realized without taking a ton of page time. And it was just a fun adventure. That's how I felt about the first one. The second one, I felt similarly. I will say I definitely think that I would have benefited from a reread of the first one. There are times when I can just jump right into sequels and it doesn't matter if it's been a while because it just clicks and everything comes back and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Or I just remember it. And this one is just one that I didn't remember a lot of things. So as it was happening, I'm like, oh yeah. And then I feel like it could have had a greater impact on me, which is not at all a fault of the book. But if you are going to go into this duology, I would recommend reading them back to back. Let's just go ahead and get the one out of the way that you all know I have talked about a lot. And that would be Flamefall. This is the sequel to Fireborn, the book that I started hashtag Fireborn Friday for last year and would consistently post pictures on Fridays. Oh my gosh, do I love this series. It is political fantasy. There's really no magic at all. It's mostly just the dragons that make it fantasy. And by the time this video goes up, the interview with Rosaria Munda, I always say it wrong, the interview with Rosaria Munda has gone up, and she just was so fun to talk to, and she discusses so many things that are her inspirations, including things like the Iliad, the Aeneid, Plato's Republic. She has a political theory degree, which plays a big role in this, and it is following a society after a revolution. You are following a character who is an Anastasia type, and then you're following a character who was a part of an oppressed class of people, but in this new government, they have the opportunity to rise up. It is so good. It is so good, and I was really nervous that I wasn't going to like the sequel as much because I love the first one so much, and I was really scared. And I was talking to Piera. Piera messaged me and she's like, when are you reading the sequel? When are you reading it? And I was like, I know, I got to get to it. And she was like, it was so good. It's my favorite thing I've read this year. And then I was like, okay. And I read it, and it's my favorite thing I've read this year. It's so good. Next up would be The Bone Shard Daughter. This is the one where I cannot wait for the sequel. This was so interesting. It was so different from most everything else that I've read before. So it's a multiple point of view story. I did a whole dedicated review for it, so if you're interested, I'll have it linked. But we follow 5 point of views, 2 main point of views, and then 2 side characters and a random, like, I don't know what's happening over here character. And the author utilizes both first person and third person, but in a way that I thought was masterful because I didn't even notice at first. So once I realized it, I was like, oh, interesting. And I thought that was really cool. It definitely makes certain characters more at the forefront in your mind, as these are the main characters. I'm going to pay attention to this plot a little bit more. And it just, I don't know, I always wanted to turn the page. The 2 main characters, one is the one that the title of the book is essentially referring to. There's this bone shard magic where people can create things called constructs, which if you read the book Foundry Side, the magic system is somewhat similar, but instead of giving commands to objects, you essentially give commands to artificial life. So you create these beings and you write these commands on bones, and then you kind of just mash together all of these commands with these bones, and these things are kind of creepy, but they obey these commands. So the main character that the title is based off of, she is the one who is learning this magic. She doesn't have any of her memories beyond a certain point. You don't know why. She doesn't know why. She wants to get her memories back. There's a mystery with that. It's weird, and it was interesting, and I was like, okay, this got really creepy, and I liked that. And then we have Jovis. I loved Jovis, and I loved Jovis's animal companion. It was Precious, mythological creature, animal companion, so cute. And Jovis is a character who stumbles into being heroic. I love characters like that. He's a good guy. All he wants to do is find his missing wife, and he is so determined. But along the way, he's kind of requested to do certain acts that would involve saving people, and he's like, oh geez, okay, fine, I'll do it just this once. And you know it's not gonna be just this once, and then he keeps kind of sort of doing it begrudgingly and helping people begrudgingly, and then he's a hero, and I loved it. The next 3, I did talk about all of these, I feel like fairly in depth in my vlog where I read technically 6 books. I started 7 books in 7 days, and I talked about them already in that, but that would be Elliot, Labyrinth Lost, and The Gilded Ones. All of these books I thought had fantastic representation, so that was really wonderful to see. We see Native American in Elliot, we see Latinx, and then we see African in The Gilded Ones. And I really appreciated that in all of these, and I definitely think that these are fantastic books just in general, but also for younger readers, because they touch on some things that I would say, especially in The Gilded Ones, they touch on some pretty heavy topics that I think I'm really excited to see in young adult fantasy. But I also think that because young adult fantasy is an age range, at least in America, the age range is 12 to 18, and that means that sometimes they lean a little younger. I felt like all of these leaned a little young, so they definitely tackle heavier things, and it doesn't mean that things geared toward a younger audience can't do that. I think they do that, and I think they do it well, but as a 28-year-old, I just didn't find myself quite connecting the way that I was hoping to. So in Labyrinth Lost, this one follows a character who she has this witch magic essentially in her family, and then her family ends up being kind of taken to this magical area, and then she has to go there and try to save them. It reminded me a lot of An Enchantment of Ravens in the way that they have to kind of go on this quest, but ultimately it had some tropes in it that are just so familiar to me at this point. There were a couple things the author did that I wasn't expecting, which I liked, but I think it's a familiar story. It's one that I feel like I've read before. Elliot is one that I've seen categorized as both middle grade and adult. I personally felt it leaned a little middle grade. It kind of is a murder mystery story, and our main character is trying to use their magic to get to the bottom of it. It was very interesting, but I'm a broken record at this point, just a little young for me. The Gilded Ones follows a character who lives in a society that sees women as just an extension of men and the lives of men. And so you're seeing this character who has a certain view of themselves and their purpose in life, and that's flipped on its head when something completely out of their control has determined them as being evil, essentially. And so they're questioning everything they've ever known throughout the story, everything they've ever been told. It's definitely a story with themes of worth and finding your worth in a society that tells you that you have none. I do think that there were some reveals toward the end that I almost felt like kind of negated some things, where I was like, I think that if we had just said this earlier, that would have made more sense. But I don't think it's going to be a huge thing for a lot of other people. I don't know if that's going to bother a ton of other people, because it seems like it hasn't, which is good. I'm glad a lot of people weren't frustrated by that. I was a little frustrated. I thought the first 100 or so pages of this were amazing. And then I don't love the training, grinding, leveling up for a large portion of the book. So I didn't enjoy a lot of that. Also, the romance in this story, I couldn't decide if I wished that we had had more time with it, or if it just hadn't been there at all. I think I almost just would have rather it not been there at all. But what was there, I just felt like there wasn't much of it, and it didn't feel like it added much, because I was just confused at the level of feelings that our character has for a person that I feel like I didn't really see them interact with much. It just kind of went from 0 to hero, just like that. It was just boom, here you go, we're in love now, kind of a vibe. And it could just be because, broken record again, it's a younger feel. So I don't know, I love sitting with characters and their feelings and their emotions and finding out like, oh, I like the slow burn, I guess. So I didn't really love that this one was just like, here's a man, now you love him. As for the recommendations on what you all would like to have been done differently or added to. The number one thing was some form of an interactive element. So what I think I'm going to do next year is add sprints to the readathon or any future readathons that I do. So that way we can come together, we can talk about what we're reading, we can get some reading done. I think that would be really fun. Now for the winners of the giveaway portion, we have one from Twitter, one from Instagram, and one from YouTube, although the Twitter person happens to also have a channel. We have Kristen is fully booked. Check out her channel. She is delightful. I watched her wrap up for the readathon and her vibe is so cozy. And she also she read Fires of Vengeance. So for those of you that are fans of that, but also she read Crown of Feathers and I'm like, I like Crown of Feathers too. And she read Fireboard and I'm like, yes, I love Fireboard. I think Kristen, you said you reread Fireborn, and I understand why, because it's amazing. Dragon Army Books is the other person who is also on BookTube, but they're the Twitter winner. They also read Fires of Vengeance, funny enough, but he is just so sweet and I'm so excited that I found both of your channels through doing this, and thank you for participating. Both of you are winners. I think Dustin, that you jokingly said that you're gonna make me buy you a leather bound.
Fingers crossed that I win the readathon so that Elliot has to buy me a book of my choice. I'm gonna make it a really nice leather bound, expensive one, so just you wait.
And I covered myself ahead of time. I said that I'm not buying fancy editions for people, so nice try. You just get a normal book. For the Bookstagram winner, we have Adrian's Book Cave. Lovely Instagram feed, such pretty Bookstagram pictures. Thank you also to you for participating. All three of you are the giveaway winners, so you can just email me and say giveaway winner. My email is elliottbrooksnovels@gmail.com. So you can email me, I'll get you a book, a normal book, and yay, congrats. That's it though for this wrap up. Thank you so much to not just these individuals, but everyone who participated. I was so excited that there was so much excitement for this readathon. I had a lot of fun with it, and I'm excited to hopefully do this again next year. I loved seeing all of your pictures. I loved seeing the magic bingo cards being filled out. It was really fun. So thank you so much for making March a wonderful month and making this readathon just such a good time. Any relevant links I will have in the description bar down below. Thank you everybody so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later.